bought the lantern from a man who refused to look at me. He sold it cheap, far cheaper than something that old should have been. Before he left, he said one thing: "This lantern only lights when something is near." At the time, I assumed he meant animals. Maybe someone approaching in the dark. What I didn't realize was that the lantern didn't mean near the house. It meant near me. I live at the edge of Alderwood Forest. Not deep inside it, but close enough that the trees begin only a few steps beyond my porch. Most people in the nearby town refuse to walk the forest trails after sunset. They say the woods change when the light fades. Paths move. Sounds travel in the wrong direction. And sometimes, something follows you home. I never believed those stories. Until the lantern. I found the merchant during the autumn market in Greythorne. His stall was smaller than the others, tucked between a spice trader and a man selling old books. Most of his items looked ordinary: rusted tools, cracked pottery, old metal trinkets. But the lantern stood out immediately. It was made of heavy brass, darker than normal lanterns, and the glass had a strange clarity to it. Not cloudy with age like most antiques. Perfect. Almost like it had never been used. I picked it up and noticed something odd immediately. There was no place for oil. No wick either. Just an empty chamber inside. When I asked the merchant how it worked, he simply shrugged. "It lights when something is near," he said. I asked what that meant. He didn't answer. Instead, he gave a price so low I assumed the thing was broken. So I bought it. For 3 days, the lantern did absolutely nothing. It sat on the wooden table in my cabin, silent and lifeless. No glow, no heat, just a decorative antique collecting dust. Eventually I forgot about it, until the 4th night. I was sitting by the fire, reading, when the lantern suddenly ignited. No spark, no sound. One moment it was dark, and the next, it was glowing with a soft golden light. I nearly dropped my book. The glow filled the room like candlelight, warm and steady. But there was still no flame inside, just light. My first thought was that there must be some kind of hidden mechanism. Maybe pressure or movement triggered it. So I stood up and walked around the room. The lantern dimmed slightly when I moved toward the far wall. Then it brightened again when I returned to the table. That was strange, but I didn't think much of it until I stepped outside. The moment I crossed the threshold of my door, the lantern went dark, completely dark. I stepped back inside. It lit again instantly. I repeated the test several times. Inside the house, glowing. Outside the house, darkness. At the time, I laughed. I assumed it was reacting to temperature differences or something equally simple. But the next night, the lantern lit again. And this time, I hadn't touched it. I woke sometime after midnight to a soft glow in the room. The lantern had turned itself on. The fire had burned low, leaving most of the cabin in darkness. But the lantern glowed gently on the table, watching, waiting. That was when I began to notice the pattern. The lantern didn't just turn on randomly. It reacted to distance. When I stood close to it, the light became brighter. When I moved away, the light dimmed, but it wasn't reacting to me. Because sometimes, when I stood right beside it, the lantern dimmed anyway, which meant something else was closer. The first time I opened the door, while the lantern was glowing brightly, I expected to see someone standing on the porch. Instead, there was nothing. No traveler, no animal, just the silent forest stretching away into darkness. But the lantern behind me flared brighter than ever, which meant something was still near, very near. After that night, the lantern began lighting itself more frequently, sometimes once a night, sometimes 3 or 4 times. Each time, the glow seemed slightly brighter, and each time I felt the strange sensation that I wasn't alone. One night, I tried something different. I placed the lantern beside the window, facing the forest. Then I sat across the room and waited. For almost an hour, nothing happened. Then the lantern suddenly ignited. Not a soft glow this time. A bright, almost violent light, as if something had stepped directly outside the window. I approached the glass slowly. The lantern grew brighter with every step. By the time I reached the window, the room was blazing with golden light, but the forest outside remained perfectly still. That was the first time I noticed the footprints in the soft dirt beneath the window. Long, thin, too long to be human, and far too narrow. They circled the cabin once, then disappeared into the forest. After that, the lantern lit almost every night, sometimes briefly, sometimes for hours, always when something was nearby, something I never saw, until the night it became brighter than the sun. I was asleep when the light woke me. The entire cabin glowed gold. The lantern on the table was blazing so brightly, I could barely look at it. Whatever was near the house had never been closer. Then came the knock. 3 slow taps on the door. I froze. The lantern intensified. The brass frame began to hum softly with heat. Another knock. Louder. Closer. The lantern light was almost blinding now, which meant whatever stood outside was inches from the door. I should have ignored it. I should have stayed where I was. But curiosity can be stronger than fear. So I walked to the door and opened it. The porch was empty. The forest silent. No wind, no animals, no footsteps, nothing. But the lantern behind me erupted into blinding light, which meant something had just stepped inside. I turned slowly. The light cast long shadows across the walls of the cabin, across the table, across the empty chair, and behind it stood a shape that hadn't been there before. Tall, thin, its head nearly brushing the ceiling, its body stretched unnaturally long, like something trying very hard to imitate a human form. It didn't move. It simply stood there, watching. The lantern burned brighter and brighter and brighter until the glass cracked. The light vanished instantly. The cabin fell into darkness. When the sun rose the next morning, the lantern sat cold and silent on the table. The glass was shattered. The brass frame blackened. It would never light again. But something else had changed. The dirt floor of the cabin was covered in footprints. The same long, narrow prints I had seen outside the window. Except these ones didn't lead away. They led through the cabin, across the floor, to my bedroom door. And they never left. The lantern only lights when something is near. And now that it's broken, I have no way of knowing when it comes back.